Good morning. Welcome everyone to the group exhibit, Hydrogen Fuel Cells and Batteries at the Hanover Fair 2016. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the first talk on the public forum today. With me, joining me on stage to discuss the market launch of fuel cell heaters, I have Alexander Dauensteiner from the initiative Brennstoffzelle. Please join me in welcoming him.
Right. Thank you.
So, many people here will have already heard of your organization.
Yep.
Let's start with a brief introduction. What is your mandate? Are you publicly or privately funded? Why are you here?
Yeah, the Initiative Fuel Cell is an organization with the main fuel cell manufacturers in Germany. So it's a German-based organization, which has been founded, I think, already more than 10 years ago, aiming, let's say, only the target to introduce micro-CHP fuel cells in residential and small business applications. So we have a cooperation with the German utilities like EWE, EnBW, MBW Mannheim, or Wingas, for example, in Kassel, to address only some of them, in coordination with the manufacturers of those systems. Because the very first beginning of the organization setup, it was very clear that it's not able or not possible to launch micro-CHP technologies only separately from each other. So if we would go this long way, from the very first development of the products until the demonstration projects towards a market introduction, which is really competitive, it would not be feasible only to do it by one separate manufacturer or utility. And therefore we decided in the previous time, as we set up the IBZ, to say let's do it in cooperation, as long as we are not really in a competitive situation. And that was the reason to set up this cooperation, which is very good, because it gives all of us the opportunity and, let's say, the basic for the market introduction of this very innovative technology.
It does seem very rare to have many different competitors' products in the same booth right next to each other. So is it funded by each of the competitors, or is it funded more so by the government to bring the market launch?
So the German IBZ, the organization itself, it's private funded. So we pay our fees annually into the IBZ, each of the member, and we fully 100% fund our activities by our own. In parallel, we have these big demonstration projects. So the market preparation of this technology will be funded also by public funding from let's say, German ministries and the European level, but German IBZ itself is 100% private money.
Okay, so you facilitate the different players in the market to come together and bring them together with the government to bring about the market launch of micro-CHP, so combined heat and power. Mm-hmm. So what does a combined heat and power system look like?
In principle, it's, as you say, combined heat and power. We produce in one and the same appliance power, that means electricity and heat. This is not very new, because based on combustion engines, this technology is already in the market since many years, especially in bigger power ranges like sub-megawatt or megawatt classes in district heating, for example, but also in small appliances in residential buildings. But the new thing for fuel cell is that the technology itself, that means the fuel cell is operating much more efficient than any combustion engine can do, with much less maintenance costs, with very high attractive savings for the customer. So we are speaking about a technology switch coming from the combustion engine towards the fuel cell, which makes it much more competitive and much more attractive for the customer to use a fuel cell than a combustion engine. Anyhow, it will be a transferring process, let's say, based on combustion engines towards fuel cell, because this technology is now coming broader in the market. We have already some of the companies offering these systems in the markets, but main advantage at the end is to save much more primary energy than we can save with any other appliance in this segment. but also to reduce significantly energy costs for the customer, and this makes it very attractive.
Okay, and when you say customers, are you thinking primarily the early adopters are more in the residential or in the commercial sector?
So any new technology, any innovation is starting with innovators. That's clear, because we need these customers in order to adapt a very innovative technology as of very high prices at the beginning of this market launch. So it's independently from the market segment. You have always to deal with these first innovators, with these pioneer customers in order to, let's say, start with the market launch. The products itself are located on the one hand in the residential segment, so most of the manufacturers and including all the big heating manufacturers like Weiland, Viessmann, BDR Group, but also smaller companies, including Bosch. Bosch has two brands, with Buderus and Junkers, but also, let's say, Lange, smaller companies like Elcor or Solid Power, working in both markets. So we are addressing more or less the residential segment in the 1 and 2 family homes, which is the biggest market in Europe. But also some of those products going into the B2B segment. That means business applications in the small commercial application, for example, small hotels or other, let's say, butchers, bakeries, something like that, which makes it very attractive because they have higher output of electrical power, 1.5 kilowatt, for example, the Blue Gen from Solid Power, which is very attractive thing for those commercial appliances. So we are starting from the residential segment, but addressing already now in the wide portfolio segments of B2B.
Okay, and given that it's Monday morning, bright and early, we're all getting a slow start to the conference. Can we start with the basics? So considering, say, a residential system, what does it look like? What is the footprint? What is the fuel that comes in? What is it for heat by forced air or by water? What other systems do you need to have next to your appliance?
Starting with the basement, I think the footprint itself is more or less that what you have already in the basements today. So it's more or less the footprint, the system itself, the fuel cell as a refrigerator, for example. So I don't know, 80 centimeters multiplied by 80 centimeters, something like that, very small. Some of the systems have already included storages, hot water storages, buffer storages for the heating in the home. Some of them have it separately, it's depending on the system, but overall you need, 2 to 3 square meters in the basement, not more. You have the fuel connection to the natural gas grid. So in Germany, the Netherlands, UK, most of the countries in the European markets are very well prepared and have already a very excellent natural gas grid. So we're connecting that to natural gas as a normal condensing boiler today. And then we have the connection to the electricity grid. It's working like the PV segment, nothing complicated, where you connect the system to the electrical grid by an inverter, which is integrated in the system and making electricity then. So it's really an exchange of an old condensing or even non-condensing boiler, or even an oil-based system when they're switching the fossil fuel from oil to gas, which is more convenient for the people, replacing the old system, putting the new system in, connecting to the grid, gas and electricity, and that was it. So a very competitive product. In that case, I think we have no challenges any longer. This is solved. It works, though the industry itself has more than 1,500 systems now in the European market. And we have proven the technology, we have proven the expectations of the customers, so that the system itself working very properly, is very small, can be included very, very easily in the basement, so this is not a big issue.
You're changing one black box for another black box.
Yeah, more or less. Okay. It needs a bit more planning, that's clear. So an exchange of a condensing boiler is relatively easy. Exchange by a fuel cell will be a bit more complicated because we anyhow have to make a proper planning. So the customer expectation, for example, in saving energy costs has to be fulfilled. So we need a proper planning, but this is not a big issue anyhow. It needs a bit more time, a bit more excellence, but all the people who includes or install such systems are very well trained. So this is as well not a big hurdle. It's not a hurdle. You have to do it properly, and if you have the know-how, you can easily do.
And when you're producing electricity at the same time, so that is a bit of a difference.
Yeah.
Do you consider these appliances heaters that produce electricity, or electricity production with heat as a benefit? They're primarily heaters, I guess.
You're right. Most of the systems working heat-driven, but we can also have an electricity-driven operating motor. For example, the big demonstration project Calux in Germany, who has installed 500 of those systems, have also included smart grid operation. So they get a signal, radio control segment, or by a GSM modem to say, I need full power now in the grid, please put up and modulate into full power range. Then the fuel cell will do it and provide energy to the grid. This works as well, but most of the systems are driven by the heat demand in the home, because the customer is clear he needs heat, and so the byproduct itself for him is electricity, even that if electricity is self-evident, the more valuable product of both of them.
It is a different way of thinking of electricity as a byproduct of heat rather than the other way around.
Yeah, that's right.
So when for the customer, when they're producing electricity, what is in place, at least in Germany, in terms of net metering? What incentives exist?
So what we can do is a full integration in the energy system today. So this is also the philosophy of the industry. Fuel cell as a standalone system, not connected to the grid. That means the remote control, for example, or the smart grid in that sense. It's something which works properly, that's not a problem. But on the other side, the target is really to be an integrated local production, high-efficient system into the future grid of energy systems in Europe, not even in Germany. This works very well because all the systems are able to communicate in an electricity-driven demand, in a smart grid. They can even remote it by pre-maintenance, so the installer is able to see already if there is a system problem, for example, he can interfere to solve the problem, and the customer do not even recognize there was a problem. So this is fully integrated with the communication technology all the manufacturers use, and the utilities are working also closely in partnership together with us in order to make this, let's say, more reliable in the future and even more competitive, because these are first models, and it's depending also how the design of the electricity system will be in the future and how important can be the role of the fuel cell.
So these products are available on the market now. What programs are in place to incentivize customers to choose these systems? Because right now they still aren't necessarily cost competitive.
Yeah, that's something which is not new for new and innovative technologies, that you start with low volumes. And that's also a good choice, because if you invest too early in a big production capacity, you become very much high risk to danger the complete business, or to damage the complete business. So it's always important to have the right speed, also investment. We are now in a phase where we can say all the different technologies are really reliable. We have different manufacturers in the markets. Others will follow during that year and the next year. And now it's, I think, the major challenge to industrialize this technology. That means, as you said, we need volumes now in the market. We need to scale up that to become the cost down. The fuel cell itself, and that's the big advantage, is in principle a very, very easy to commercialize system, because it's more or less fully automated technology. So you can fully automate that. As soon as you have the volumes in the market, you can invest with a high safety of investments. So you can industrialize that, and that makes the system and the technology very cheap. I always compare that with the PV industry. So they're starting also with low volumes. They had the 1,000 roof program in Germany, then other programs like the Renewable Energy Law follows, and it was successfully introduced in the market by fully automatization of the technology. And this is in principle from a technology point of view also possible for the fuel cell, so that any view of the industry, we all together are very much convinced that as soon as we have, let's say, 10, 20, 30,000 systems in the market, we can already see a significant cost reduction, and 30,000 systems is nothing. So we as Weiland for alone sell 2 million appliances of heating systems all the year. So the market is huge, but the investments needs to be now increased step by step in order to get the cost down. That's the major challenge. But this is not an issue for fuel cell alone. You have also, for other innovative technologies, this challenge ahead.
So what role does the government play in creating volumes and encouraging this ramp?
Yeah. This is a major point. We have worked a lot of time now to convince, let's say, that my favorite comparison is always the marathon race. If a marathon race, you run more than 40 kilometers, and the last few rounds, this is in the stadium. And now the industry is in the stadium, but we are not in the finish. And this means that we now need a last final phase of this commercialization, which is supported in a set time frame with defined milestones, defined criteria, with a decreasing funding in order to get a competitive technology funded by the government. So if a customer buys this very expensive or relatively expensive system, he will be funded. And the first low volumes, it's a bit more funding, then it's decreasing by increased volumes. And this is fortunately now planned from the German government. So the German market is the lead market for this technology. And the Federal Ministry of Economics has now planned to set up this program, a technology implementation program for this technology for end customers. And we are waiting for that. It's, as we know, it's finalized. It's set up the program. And as soon as this can start, I think my conviction as the speaker of the industry here is that we now then will have the framework which the industry needs in order to commercialize the system successfully. But that's then, let's say, the final chapter of this big book we have written in the last more than 15, even 20 years in the industry.
It's a very interesting book. It'll be exciting to get to, to the end. Do you have an idea when this last chapter will start, when the launch date for this funding program will be?
Yeah, it's a bit difficult because what we know is that the program itself has to be notified by the European Commission. So it's now in Brussels. It's completely finished. So the setup of the program, the design is finished. We now have to wait until the finalization of the notification program in Brussels. So I cannot give you a date when the program has been or will be announced to the end customers. But we hope as an industry that will be done very quickly, because it's very important that we can now start with this program, as then we can really have an industrialization on a solid base, which we can trust on, and also the customers. This is the more important fact. So I cannot give you a date. So we have, I think, on Wednesday a discussion with the German Ministry of Economics here, same place, hoping to get further information on that. But I know that it's now in Brussels at the notification process.
Well, we will all wait patiently, I'm sure. And this program will be, what will it look like for the customer? Is it to help with their setup costs, or will they be paid over time for the energy that they produce?
So the program itself will be help for incentive in the capital costs, so investment costs. Because this is the major challenge. We already have a situation that for our operational costs expenditures, so that means OPEX, total cost of ownership, the fuel cell itself is already a very competitive product. So, for example, in the big demonstration programs in Europe and Germany, we have customers saving around 700 to 1,000 euro a year, reducing their energy costs in Germany, for example. This is already very good. And in addition, on the subsidy program on the German government, there will be incentives from the CHP law, which is already since years in place in Germany. So the customer can also get fundings for the produced kilowatt hours of the system by the CHP law. So there will be both. We are waiting, as you said, for the incentive scheme program from the German Ministry of Economics, but we have also the possibility for the customers to get CHP law fundings for the produced electricity.
Wonderful. So that should help push into the future, and
Yeah.
then so I will ask you to predict the future.
It's difficult always.
Very
but I
difficult.
tried.
But you'll try.
Yeah.
When do you think the micro CHP will exist without incentives?
I think my expectation is that we need about 5 to 7 years, something about that, to be really competitive without any funding.
Okay.
This depends on a lot of factors. This depends especially how does the electricity price will be developed in the future. So if you have a sensitive analysis of the economics for the customer, the electricity price is the major factor. If you increase that only by 0.5% per year, you have savings over thousands of the years. So this will play an important role, how the energy design and especially the price design for electricity in the future energy scenario will develop. As we, even on the base of today's price system, for example in Germany, can already show a very good economics for the customers. This is already the case, and we assume the electricity price will not decrease but further increase, very likely, as you want to know the future and the prediction of that. But it's clear that we have to calculate with increasing prices, so that it is even more competitive than today. But as I said, I see a development in the next 5 to 7 years. And if the industrialization and the commercialization of volumes will be successful, I think then we have a situation, let's say, comparable to the heat pump industry, which also starts many years ago with very, very high volumes with the PV industry, which is a mass market product. Even we had failures in German business. That's another factor, yeah. But the technology, the products itself, PV, is a mass market product all over the world. And I think I do not speak about a mass market in the next 5 years, but we have a projection of, let's say, German volumes, which is in the range of about 50,000 units in 5 years. Maybe 70,000 units in 2022, which makes clear that it is only a small market up to there. This is comparable to the heat pump market today in Germany, but it's a reliable and a really competitive market without any funding any longer. And that is what we have to show.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I do apologize. We've had too much fun talking up here. I don't think we have time for questions at this time, but please do follow to ask Alexander Dauensteiner questions at his booth. It is E51. I do encourage you to stop by because you can see all of the different micro CHP products under one small footprint, and it is really interesting to see them and compare them. Up next, please do stick around. We have an interesting discussion. It is with many different people. It's a press conference on the developments of hydrogen and fuel cells in the USA and Germany. So ongoing partnerships. We have members from Now GmbH, the US Department of Energy, SFC Energy, and Gunnar Inc. Please join me in thanking our wonderful speaker, Alexander Dauensteiner from Initiative Brennstoffzelle.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.